Call the meeting to order. Welcome to ASCC, November 23rd. Can we do roll call, Laura?
Commissioner Sill,
Here.
Commissioner Wilson,
Here.
Vice Chair Ross,
Here.
Chair Breen,
Here.
and Commissioner Koch is not present at this time.
All right. So I thought that this was a preliminary meeting until I picked up my package, but as it turns out, if the ASCC feels compelled to take action today to move this project forward to Planning Commission, it's possible. The planning staff has tried to keep this as flexible as possible. So we'll hear from the design group, take public comment, and then discuss best ways to proceed. So I ask, because this is kind of a controversial item, anyone who wants to speak in public comment to, keep your comments succinct. And we have read your letters already, and so let's just try to keep that in mind. With that, I'm going to start with oral communications for items not on the agenda. Is there anyone out there who'd like to speak to something not on the agenda? We can hear it, but we can't discuss it. And that appears not to be the case. So
Through the chair,
yes.
we do have two hands up. So those may be oral communications, so we should give those a
Okay.
try and see if they are.
Hang on, I'm doing attendees, I don't see that. Oh, there they are, okay. So Judith has her hand up and Kathy Christie. This is for items not on the agenda today. All right, well then we'll take them. Judith?
Unmute.
Mute your,
Yeah,
yes?
I got it. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes, okay. Conservation Committee has been looking at the issue of invasives on construction lots, especially construction that goes on for over a year, with particular attention to detrichia and thistles. And we have some proposed language we'd like to have added to the planning department boilerplate. In the same way they have a tree protection plan, we'd like to have an invasive protection. And you can't do anything about it tonight, so I would like to request that I be put on the agenda of your next meeting so I can bring you that proposed language and we can discuss it. I believe it has to be approved by you before
Yeah.
it can't go direct from conservation to planning.
Laura and I talked about that today, and they're working on it. We're gonna try to get it on one of the next agendas.
Okay, so Laura,
well-
then should I send you the language that we worked up? Would that be helpful or just in the way?
That would be great if you would send it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And Judith
Yes.
Murphy, I just in light of that comment, in terms of the boilerplate, as we go forward on it, I'd like to see number 2 removed from the boilerplate, which is existing vegetation is preserved to the maximum extent possible. There are times when we want most of a property to be cleared, of same sort of thing, invasives.
Okay,
So that's one thing that I want to work on too. So thank you.
all righty.
Okay, Kathy Christie and John Matlock have their hands up. Do you guys want to speak now or do you want to speak up to the fire?
Oh, hi. Hi, Dana. We just
Hi.
wanted to say hello and to make sure we were on there because we didn't have any reference that we were on. So that's all we needed at this point.
Yeah. You're on.
And the fire station's later, right?
And the sheriff?
It's coming up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll mute me myself again. Or did you do that? Sorry, we're first timers on this, on a phone. So I'll lower my hand. Okay, how's that?
Very good. Okay, so let's proceed. And the first item on the agenda is the staff report for 135 Portola Road, our fire station. And I think Dylan, you're presenting?
That's correct.
Okay. Hello.
Okay, let's see. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Yeah, looks good. All right. right, let me just do something real quick. I have two screens now, so I have to, okay. Okay. So that way, so everyone can see can everyone see the title page?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So the proposed project is an addition, remodel, and associated site improvements to an existing fire station at 135 Portola Road. Staff would like to note that the applicant has requested that the project proceed to ASCC while discussion about the landscaping and other concerns continue with the neighbors. Staff is therefore presenting the project with recognition that ASCC feedback may help resolve these outstanding issues. Staff also notes that an updated landscaping plan was received Friday afternoon after packet creation. Therefore, no substantial analysis or consideration was performed on this landscaping plan in this presentation. Staff anticipates that the project team will walk the ASCC through the updated plan in their presentation of the project. Okay. So the subject property is located on the westerly side of Portola Road from the intersection of Alpine Road and Portola Road. It is within the town's R1 zoning district. However, conditional use permit X7D5 issued by the town in 1965 and renewed in 1967 allows for the existing use as a fire station. The fire station building plans were approved by the town's ASCC in 1976 and completed in 1977. Since 1977, no significant changes to the use or station have occurred. Staff also notes that the station is noted on the land use element of the town's general plan as institutional use, the general plan map, the town's Nathorst triangle area plan and diagram. Staff found that the expanded use of the fire station will still conform to the town's general plan and the Nathorst triangle plan. So the table on the left represents development standards for the underlying R1 zoning district. Impervious surface information is unknown currently due to the outstanding landscaping and associated site improvement analysis that staff previously discussed. With respect to the parking requirements, town code regulates off-street parking requirements based on use of the site. However, the site's institutional use per the town's general plan is not a listed use. Therefore, the Planning Commission is authorized to establish the parking requirements. So the parking and the floor area, which is in this table, exceeds what would be normally allowed, are two outstanding issues that require further consideration by the ASCC, and staff briefly discusses later in this presentation. So the proposed scope of work is to remodel the existing fire station, to add office and dorm space, and a turnout room, add a turnout room and new apparatus garage. The total additional square footage to the existing 3,971 square foot station is 1,837 square feet. The areas that are marked in blue on the right represent the new additional areas, additional square feet to the station. So this is a section of the existing station and the new apparatus garage. Staff wants to note that the proposed maximum height is 16 feet and 6 inches, not 16 feet as noted in the staff report. And so this is the north elevation of the new fire station. This is the south elevation. This is the east elevation. And then this is the west elevation. And And so turning to the grading plan. So hardscape improvements are the predominant driver of on-site soils movement. So there are 505 cubic yards of soil movement that is subject to ASCC review. And then there is a anticipated 125 cubic yards of off-haul. And so now turning to the colors and materials. All proposed materials and treatments meet town reflectivity guidelines and include a natural color palette and material choice. Staff would like to note that the selected colors for the windows was omitted in the staff report. That's this note up here. Oh. It is a Kelly Moore paint. Leather satchel is the common name, and it has a LRV value of 10.24. So now turning to the lighting plan. All existing outdoor lighting fixtures are proposed to remain. They're noted on the plan as the mustard colored circles, with two new outdoor lighting fixtures added to the outdoor lighting plan. So there's a fixture D noted in the lighting table. It's the blue framed goosenecked fixture. Complies with the town's outdoor lighting policy. But fixture C, which is the wall sconce, which is framed in green, does not, as it is located next to fenestration, not entry doors, and produces a 4,000 Kelvin light temperature versus a 2,700 Kelvin temperature, which is required per the design guidelines. So for reference, the fixture that is non-compliant are these two, and this is the fenestration that staff notes. So turning to public comments. So staff sent meeting notices to neighbors within a 1,000-foot radius of the subject property. Several public comments were received after packet creation, which we have forwarded to the ASCC today as a supplemental item. Staff would also note that the project team held a public outreach meeting on September the 16th, 2020 to discuss the project with the neighbors. A summary of this meeting, which was prepared by the project team, is provided as attachment 15 of the staff's report. Okay. So the Planning Commission is a decision-making body for the application since it's also seeking a conditional use permit amendment. However, the ASCC is charged with making a recommendation to the Planning Commission on architectural and site development review. So section 18.64.060 of Town Code outlines criterias and findings for approval of architectural and site development review applications, which are the components of the project within the ASCC's expertise. Those findings are listed on this slide. The ASCC may wish to provide recommendations or feedback to the applicant to ensure that these findings listed can be met. Now moving to the town's design guidelines. So the design guidelines include review criteria for three main aspects of a project: site design, architectural design, and landscape design. Under these main aspects, the guidelines provide additional principles for certain aspects of the project. These principles are discretionary and are subject to interpretation by the reviewing body, in this case, ASCC. Staff analyzed the project under the site design and architectural design aspects of these guidelines and determined general conformance. However, staff did not analyze the project under the landscape design aspect, as the updated landscape plan, as noted previously, was received Friday afternoon, and there was, unfortunately, no time was given to do a thorough analysis. All right. So now turning to topics of further consideration that the ASCC could discuss at tonight's meeting. So the first is the updated landscaping plan. So as staff has noted repeatedly, the plan was received Friday afternoon after packet creation. So no substantial analysis was performed in this presentation. Staff is anticipating that the project team will walk ASCC through the updated plan in their presentation of the project. Secondly, the parking requirements, which Chapter 18.36 regulates. Based on the fact that there is no institutional use listed within the ratio table, Planning Commission requires, the section of the code requires that Planning Commission stipulate the number of required spaces. Staff likes to note that we will present analysis to the Planning Commission for consideration of the proposed 13 spaces, and staff's initial assessment of those number of spaces is sufficient based on the intensity of use proposed. Lastly, the proposal exceeds the maximum allowable floor area on site. A similar proposal was submitted by the district in 2009 that originally included floor area above the limit in the code. At that time, staff determined that the floor area exceedance could be remedied through an amendment to the existing CUP that governs the site. However, current staff has not yet fully analyzed whether the floor area exceedance proposed today may be addressed through a CUP amendment or code interpretation, or whether the project would need a zoning code clarification or amendment to move the project forward. While the consideration of the CUP amendment and code interpretations are generally the purview of the Planning Commission, the ASCC may wish to provide feedback or recommendations on the question of floor area and compliance with the municipal code to assist staff in this recommendation. So this presentation is intended to guide ASCC's conversation on how to best move the project forward in light of the outstanding issues. Staff would like to note that ASCC could take the following actions tonight. 1, forward a recommendation of approval for architectural and site development review to the Planning Commission. Or 2, offer comments, reactions, and directions to assist the applicant to make any adjustments or clarifications that commissioners conclude are needed to continue discussion of the project and make a final recommendation at a future meeting. Staff would like to note that if the Planning Commission or if the ASCC moves forward with a recommendation of approval, option 1, that the findings that were presented previously per section 18.64.010, the Planning Commission or the ASCC would need to go through each item and identify the findings through discussion so that staff could capture those in the document to forward to the Planning Commission for their consideration of that recommendation. And so with that, this concludes staff's presentation and we're available for any questions.
Thank you, Dylan. Are there commissioner questions for staff?
No.
Dave?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. One is, if this application gets moved on to the Planning Commission through our recommendation this evening, does it come back to the full ASCC as a matter of course? Or would it have passed all ASCC hurdles at that point?
It would not come back as a matter of course unless you recommended a condition to that effect and then the Planning Commission approved it. So the example would be if the full AFCC wished to see the landscaping plan in the future, then perhaps you could make a positive recommendation on the project with the recommended condition that the landscaping plan come back to the full ASCC. But without that condition of approval, it would not.
Okay, second question. Legal questions have been raised about the viability of the project. Is it safe to assume from a commissioner standpoint that those questions are relevant perhaps for the council or the Planning Commission, but not relevant for our review?
Are you speaking specifically to the floor area exceedance, or are talking about the general plan consistency questions?
Consistency as raised in a letter from council to one of the neighbors.
Okay, in regards to general plan consistency, staff would remind the ASCC that General plan consistency is, in terms of our rural character, can be found in our policy documents. And so our whole zoning code and our design guidelines and our strict lighting and our landscaping guidelines are all designed to maintain rural character. So we haven't presented an extremely detailed assessment of general plan consistency, but we do generally find it to be consistent and could provide a more detailed general plan consistency language to the Planning Commission for their consideration. So I do not think that that item is something that should hold up the ASCC's consideration of this item.
Thank you.
And to
Other
add to-
commissioner questions?
I don't have any questions.
Jane didn't. I have a question about handicap parking. In one of the elevations, there are 2 spaces. How is that determined? It seems like those spaces would be vacant quite a lot. Is that, I mean, I'm sure that's a legal thing, but do you have to have 2 spaces?
Accessibility for handicapped people is required by the building code in a certain ratio. And then I would defer to the applicant team to address how that ratio is being addressed in this project.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no other commissioner questions, let's lateral things to the design team. Carter, are you going to take it from here?
I'll start. Thank you very much, for hearing us in this odd and strange format. We look forward to being back in person soon. It's kind of hard for me to look into your eyes when all I see is Dana's finger on the screen.
I don't know how to do this.
So, this project has been stewing for quite a while. It actually went before the town council before our November of 2019 submission for design review. We've planned this addition to be modest in scale and in keeping with the style to improve the fire district's opportunity for storage and response. The fire station originally in 1976 was a dorm style fire station. In 1992, there was some minor adjustments made, to improve the fire station, such that there would be at least, some individual sleeping rooms. This plan is to create sleeping rooms for, the staff, and office space for the staff, for their ever increasing requirements for training, physical fitness, and for reporting. The other, significant change in this fire station is taking the apparatus, not the apparatus, but the turnout gear storage out of the apparatus bays. It's been found that the historic turnout lockers on the edges, of the apparatus bay, puts the firefighters at significant risk of cancer, because of the deposition of exhaust gases and particles, on the turnout gear in the apparatus bay. So we've chosen to expand and create a turnout storage room, between the apparatus building, and the firehouse building. The last part, to the addition, is the addition of a apparatus bay, following the same, pattern of traffic through the station, entering on the right-hand side, and exiting, on the left-hand side. Those are the 3 major changes. The other additions, are to provide, adequate parking, for the station, and appropriately respond, to the positioning of trash and recycling. We've worked hard to meet with the neighbors. We've met with them virtually and on site. and would continue, to want to work through, the landscape issues. At the same time, there have been some adjustments. And I'm allowed to share my screen, I think. So these are the plans that, we talked about in response, to some of those questions, trying to move, some of the, parking and paving around. So this plan is what, has been submitted, with the grouping of the vehicles, moving trash out here, to, the essentially outside the, the living quarters. And this is, a further reduction, that we're capable, of doing. In addition, we'd be happy, to retain the trees 45, 46, and 47, to help ameliorate, the view impacts, from the neighboring property. And if we could, if we can keep, 48, we would keep that as well, but that's really close, to our driveway area. The major changes are the reduction, in the parking, over here close to the Schultz property, and the elimination of the trash enclosure, at the back of, the right-hand side of the property, and moving the trash, out to a fenced enclosure, outside of the day room, by the exit driveway. So if I back out, the right-hand side is what we are proposing. The left-hand side, is, the adjustments that we're, in a position to be able to make, in order to help ameliorate, some of the parking and intrusion concerns. And the reason this was in flux was because, we've been working through with the neighbors in a pretty diligent manner, to respond to those things. So I'm here for your questions.
Okay.
I'm
Is
having
that-
trouble getting this all centered so you can see it. So forgive me for a second.
Anyone else presenting with you, Carter?
Well, this is, I mean, Fire Chief, Rob Winder, I can't see you right now, but, if you'd like to chime in, I'd encourage that, and also Mike Wasserman, the project manager, is.
Hi, and maybe I could speak real quickly if that's okay.
Sure, Mike.
I'm Mike Wasserman. I'm the project manager for the Woodside Fire Protection District. And I think one of the things I just wanted to point out with the station proposed modifications to the station, it's not to create additional capacity, but rather it's just to be able to appropriately accommodate the existing capacity. This plan does not result in a plan to add more additional apparatus or additional personnel to the station, but merely just to properly accommodate the needs of the current station as it's currently operating. And also just wanted to kind of echo what Carter was saying, is that we've met with the neighbors several times, and we are looking at several different concessions that Carter just walked you through there from what we originally submitted to try to appease them and try to mitigate their concerns.
Okay, thank you. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay.
No, I could speak here as well.
Hello.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rob Linder. I'm the fire chief for Woodside Fire, and thank you for having us this afternoon. And just echoing what Carter was saying and what Dylan was saying as far as the plan itself and the modifications to the plan. I don't think there's a lot of negative feedback compared, pertaining to the insides of the building. we currently have 3 bedrooms and an office on site. It's over 15 years ago, we actually increased staffing to the Portola Valley Station to 4 people. And we were actually sleeping 1 person in the office, which is in the front part of the building. So in doing a type of remodel, we needed to increase the capacity to that. And that's why you see the increased capacity per se. We took that 4th person out of Station 8 about a year and a half ago to upstaff another piece of apparatus in Woodside. But, we have that ability that, when push comes to shove, we're going to have the potential to, to have to, increase staffing or put the appropriate people where they need to be. And where that really came to fruition was the CZU Lightning Complex fire. We increased staffing for the period of time while the fire was burning. And, we wanted to increase coverage to the area. And the bottom line was we had no ability to put extra people in Portola Valley because we'd maxed out our size. So with these additions, that would allow us to be able to do that. It's not a 24/7, 365, addition that we would be having. So that's not the intent. The added apparatus room or garage area is only in addition to what we currently have that you saw in one of the other pictures. We have a covered carport that we have equipment in, but Department of Homeland Security has made the recommendations that we house our vehicles and our personnel. Got a cat in here. we house everything and locked, whether that be access to the stations or access to our apparatus, and that doesn't allow us to do it currently. So by adding that extra garage or apparatus room, that allows us to do that. So it's not really a want, but it is a need for security purposes. As far as the drive around that you see on the diagrams here, this isn't a case that it's a thoroughfare that it's going to be used as a drag strip, or vehicles are going to be constantly moving around the building all day long. It's just to have the ability for vehicles to move forward and not have the ability, not have the ability, but our desire is not to have our vehicles backing up. Backing up is one of the most dangerous things that we can do. And especially coming off the Portola Road corridor, we really don't want to back vehicles up for safety purposes. So to have that thoroughfare to go around the station allows the ability that in the event our garage areas are full, access can be made around the building and keep vehicles moving forward. The way the plan's being drawn up for lighting, the headlights for the most part will not be changed from what our vehicles are currently doing. So I don't see any negative impacts to the neighbors by having to put them into different positions by doing that. The parking itself, there's been questions raised on parking, and if we need that amount of parking or there's too much parking, the bottom line is we have over 30 vehicles in our fleet, whether that be emergency response vehicles, backup vehicles to those emergency response vehicles, support vehicles, whether that be for our chipper program or just utility vehicles that need to take vehicles around, whether that be through any other means through our suppression or fire prevention divisions. We technically don't have enough parking spaces in the district. We only have the 3 stations as well as our administrative building. But given the fact that we have to keep our vehicles up to date, whether that be through maintenance and there's vehicles that break down, we've had, it's not really a luxury, but we've had the knowledge that there's always vehicles that are out of the area getting fixed. But, if every vehicle was in service and available and everybody was on duty, we would max out our parking. So that is without even having visitors or without having a class up at Station 19 or wherever it is. So we think that we could even put more parking, but we know that we don't want to impact, our neighbors in any of our 3 stations if we don't have to. So this is what we're looking at, that we do need this, but we're willing to make some changes given the feedback that we've had, as far as proximity to a residence or proximity or a visual appearance from a window, from a first floor or second floor window. We've made these changes to hopefully show our good faith that that's what we're trying to do, that we're not trying to increase the amount of noise in our area or visual disturbance, because that's not the intention. The intention is that we want to be good neighbors. We feel like, everywhere in the district, we've been good neighbors, and we want to continue that in moving forward. Now, there's been a lot of conversation, with the front of the building with a proposed sheriff's office. And I don't know what, the ASCC has heard, the town, the public, et cetera. Let me just make myself clear that this was not brought up by the town. This was not brought up by the sheriff's office. This was brought up in conversations that I had previously when I was deputy fire chief with the now retired fire chief, that given the fact of law enforcement and issues that were happening in the area at the time that we were talking about a proposal, there was an outpouring of concern on visual presence. So we were talking and said, if we're going to do a remodel, what about a visual presence of adding an office to our location? So that was totally on us. It wasn't a pay thing. It wasn't a rent thing. It was just an idea that was brought up on our behalf. That in turn was supported by the town. It was supported by the sheriff's office because, it's a good collaboration. We have the sheriff's office and the California Highway Patrol using some space up in Emerald Hills. Our proposed station that is now passed through planning in Woodside has an office as well. So this was just, our way of saying, we have that ability here. After listening to concerns from the neighbors, it's not a case of that I'm trying to cause, a disturbance or disruption, or a negative impact. And, me personally, it wasn't that big of an issue to me to say, okay, we won't put it there. I can't answer for the sheriff's office and I can't answer for the town, as far as the desire to be in that spot. But, if that was a make or break thing here as we move forward, then, I'm okay with that. But it is a positive as far as the collaboration. We've never received a single complaint at either of our other two fire stations. So, but I can't answer for what's going on there. So I respect what the neighbors' concerns are. And if that comes about, then, my opinion is I'm okay with that. As far as, let's see, the coverage of area, you could see that we have that covered carport. So, and we have storage on the backside of that property currently. So, by removing the carport, removing some of that storage on the western portion of the property, for that apparatus room, it's going to be a change, obviously, but I don't think it's going to be as big of a change, given the fact that we are removing some structures and to put that one in. So, all in all, I think it's a good plan. I know people have talked about, let's move all the parking to the commercial side or the south side of the property. And I want to convey that it is not in the best interest from a public safety standpoint to do that. We've made some concessions to add a couple of spots over there, but the bottom line is on the egress side of a station, you don't want vehicles, and you don't want, that movement on that side, just in case for emergency response. Plus, we do the overwhelming majority of our training on the commercial side. And by having vehicles there, that would impact the potential for hoses to hit those vehicles, for water to hit the vehicles. We have a drafting pit as well as a fire hydrant on that side. And I think that's the best place for it because it's on the commercial side. And there's no reason to move that, because I think if we had to move that anywhere else on the property, it would greatly impact in a negative manner all the neighbors, versus it being on this side and being on the commercial side of it. But adding more vehicles over there, it just makes it too too busy over there, and it just does not make it safe for our training purposes. And that's why we've done what we've done. That's pretty much all I have. You know, I'm open to any questions regarding any of that. Anything else?
Thank you. Gentlemen, I thought at the beginning of the meeting, you guys were going to present the landscape plan to the public. Is that not the case?
No, it is. I just wanted to deal with some of these
Okay.
more
All right.
basic issues first. So let me grab that. Let me stop sharing and then I'll be right back. Okay. So here's that landscape plan. Can you see that, Dana?
No. No. I'm going to put on 2 pairs of glasses.
Oh,
And yes, it's on the screen.
oh, well, that's what I was, it wasn't whether you could see it. It was, what is it on the screen? I'm sorry.
It's on the screen.
Okay.
Well, you want to talk about it?
So what we're doing is, is developing, a screening edge, to be compatible with the redwoods along the Schultz, side of the property. This area, is the entrance and the parking, for the Schultzes. So dealing with that, with the addition of 4 redwoods, and 12 toyons, to be spaced along the property line. Then here in the back, doing some oak trees, and some dogwoods and some understory planting along this edge, so that we're not taking away the light from the Mountjoy property, but screening what limited mass there is, because the apparatus bay is not very tall. It's only about it's less than 17 feet tall, and it's we're carrying the elevation of the roof directly out from the existing roof of the apparatus bay building. It's a pretty simple plan. It's not trying to re-landscape the site, but to rehabilitate those areas where trees have been removed or where additional screening is found to be necessary.
Okay, thank you. Anything else to submit here?
Not at this point. What we're looking forward to is the ASCC comments, recommendation to to the Planning Commission for approval. We're happy to continue to resolve landscape and planting issues all the way until and into the construction. If there's if we need to identify areas that need more specific attention, but it's a relatively small addition. It is, as Chief Linder said, just not an increase in service, but a better housing of the current level of service. And then the creating space for the already under supported parking, and providing access as would rationally be developed on a drive-through station. Any other-
Before
Any
I
other
go-
questions, on the landscape plan?
Yes, I understood that the trees on the back side of all that planting were going to be removed.
The trees in there right now are currently called for to be removed because, it's our understanding that the neighbor wanted them to be removed because she has concern, that they're causing damage, to her property. There's currently a fir tree, large fir tree here, and 3 redwood trees, kind of over in this area.
Yeah.
Trees 45, 46, and 47. 48 is kind of over here at this notch.
Yes.
We don't have, and we don't necessarily need those trees to be removed.
Okay.
But, we were responding, to the request for removal, with the additional, screening.
Okay, thank you. So if you don't have anything that you're going to offer up, I'm going to ask commissioners if they have questions for the design team. And so commissioners, does anyone have questions?
Yeah,
Jane?
yes. I have a sort of layperson's question for Mr. Lindner regarding the current engine stations that you have. Is there a reason why they have to be put not parallel, but adjacent to each other rather than in one long line? And also for Carter, did you consider a second story on the administrative building? And I'd also like to know, but I'm not sure whether or not this is a question about the bathroom facilities for the fire people, because there only seem to be 2 toilets in the administrative building and 5 bedrooms. And also whether or not the 5th bedroom will be usable by the sheriff's office, because I understand that the sheriffs currently have situations where they don't have places to sleep either.
So I'll take the garage space for that portion of the question. So there are stations that have extra deep garage space, so they would line up front to back. Historically, for your frontline equipment, you don't necessarily want that, because if only one leaves, then there's going to be one parked there, which means when you're done, you're either going to have to back into the space that you just vacated, or you're going to have to come in. You're going to have to come in behind the other one, move that other one all the way around, and put it back in that spot. We do have one station where our reserve equipment is front to back like that, but I think Carter can answer probably better than me. I don't know, I don't think that's a possibility on site because of the turn radius of all the vehicles, that it wouldn't be, we couldn't do that here by having it more deep rather than extending out towards the outer portion of the property.
Yeah, so I can help finish, that answer is that we have a turning radius to get in and we have a turning radius to get out. Extending that double deep is historically, been avoided in fire stations, for, part of the reason that, that Rob was talking about, is that you want to be able to, have each piece of equipment respond, as a frontline or first responding, piece of equipment, rather than having them, stacked up double deep. We do that in places, in fire stations where, we don't have any alternative, and this is a natural way to respond, for this station. To answer your question about, going 2-story, Jane, we didn't even consider that, because the amount of space that we're adding, to the fire station itself is very, very small. And it is a minor addition, where we've actually got space on the site. So we didn't consider that at all.
And then as far as the bedroom being usable for the sheriff's office, that was never even discussed at our level or with the sheriff's office, as far as would that become a location for any type of sleeping quarters for law enforcement. That was never brought up. But we could, with the shifts that we work, whereas law enforcement doesn't work 24-hour shifts, there are extra bedrooms available for people who commute in from long distances, people that may drive in the night before, that may want to sleep at the location prior to starting their shift the next morning. That allows us the ability to do that. And we pretty much have that at the other two stations. This would allow us the ability to do that in the event that we're not hiring back extra people, because we've vacated on a strike team to other parts of the state, or something similar to, the CZU complex, where we're increased staffing to our community itself. So that allows us that flexibility.
Right. Well, you probably know where I'm headed with this, is because if the new appliance room and the engine rooms were shifted closer to the administrative building, and a second story was put on the administrative building, you would have more room for bedrooms and bathroom facilities. And you would also be able to have a fitness room, which was requested in or designed in 2009, but hasn't been included now. And it would possibly alleviate the necessity for the extra 10 feet between the engine room and the appliance room, which would shift the access road closer to the main building and possibly alleviate more of the neighbours' concerns regarding the access road going all the way around the buildings.
So Jane, you're suggesting that this space in between, the main building, should be an apparatus bay? Is that what you're?
No, I think she's going.
I'm talking about between the engine rooms and the new apparatus room at the end. You've got a toilet, you've got a store, and another, it says general.
That's a generator.
Right. But would that
we currently have
to be shifted closer?
Yeah, I don't know, Carter would have to answer that one, but currently we have storage, we have a shop where the guys can work on tools that are on the vehicles itself. And I think Carter just added the bathroom in like an open space that's currently right there as it is, given the fact that, we do training on site, or if crews come back from a call and they have, we'll call it quote unquote decontamination, items that they have to do, they have the ability to at least go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
This is the current end of the existing building.
Yeah.
So it didn't make sense, didn't make economic sense, to tear that down. We were, essentially adaptively reusing, that space and that structure, and adding, the apparatus bay, as an open, as an interior open space. It was a very straightforward way to add to that building. It's following the existing paradigm. Rather than considering, a larger, remodel or large scale renovation of the existing building.
Jane, do you have further we're not on comments, questions?
No, not at the moment.
Al, Dave, do you have questions?
I have no questions.
I have some questions.
Okay.
Chief Linder, just to what I think I heard you say, that you don't anticipate increased level of activity that's not related to emergency response. In other words, no increased staffing, no increased training. It'll function pretty much the same way it does now. Except
Correct.
except for situations like the CZU fire, where you would want to staff up in anticipation of potential problems.
Yes, correct.
Okay. This is probably a little bit more for Carter, but it sounds like the rear drive is probably an infrequent use.
That's its intention.
I'm wondering if there's a different way to treat that area. Right now, it's pretty formally developed. In other words, much like the rest of the site, paving, curbs, etc. Is there any kind of alternate material that might stand up to occasional use, even by heavy vehicles,
For sure.
and be movable,
Yes.
maybe require more maintenance?
We could end up with, essentially a base rocked path, or even just wheel paths, for the apparatus, because everything is going to be, running straight through.
Right.
It doesn't, we could add that to the landscape plan. You couldn't plant anything of any height, but
Right.
we could, provide for the pass through, without the formality, of a paved driveway.
Okay. On the south elevation of the new garage, a couple of
I don't have that right now. So Dylan, could you share that?
and if you can't, they're sort of conceptual questions. Might help other people to look at the elevation if it's available, but I had a couple of questions about it. One is, would there be an opportunity on that side of the building to grow some kind of climbing plant or something to soften the sort of industrial nature of that elevation?
Yes and no. It's actually one of those wooey things, the wildland urban interface that discourages, the growth of plant material on that building. If we really wanted to create, a screen, it would make more sense, to create a screen, probably, at the, just inside the setback, that would be green, and it could be taller, than a 6-foot fence, and it could provide complete screening. We could do a living wall, at that point, because the building is 38 and a half feet from the property line.
Right. So Dylan, maybe pull up the east elevation. I think I misspoke the way they're labeled here.
Yeah.
It's the,
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And creating a tall wall, or something green there, or the elimination, of the lower window. Because the glass in an apparatus bay is really about, providing natural lighting, during the daytime, so that they don't the district doesn't have to turn on the lights during the day.
Right. What about light spill at night?
We typically hang the lights down below, where those windows are, because, the apparatus doesn't extend up that tall.
Right. Be pretty tough to screen light spill from those lights if if there was much illumination at night. And I understand the nature of the operations don't allow the elimination of lighting in there because who knows when emergency response might be required.
Yeah.
Um,
But
there
we
are a
can't,
couple,
Dave, we can control, what lights and the amount of light that comes on, during a response event.
uh-huh,
It doesn't take that much light to get, get from, the station to the apparatus and get out.
uh-huh,
It's not like you're, gathering up equipment. It's already sitting on the engine or on the vehicle before you arrive.
sure. And
The other periods, where they're, loading, cleaning, is typically not during the middle of the night.
right. There are a couple of wall sconces on that elevation. They're not showing on the drawing here, but on plans they're indicated.
Yeah, those
It's
are
tight.
there to provide access, lighting around that end.
Uh-huh.
It would be easy for us to eliminate those.
Okay, or my question really was, what is the anticipated elevation of those lights? Are they 10 feet off the ground or are they up?
They're probably around 8 feet off the ground.
Okay,
They're intended to provide access lighting. It's not, there isn't anything to light there except the access. And
right.
the reality is that we could probably do that with, with a path light and a step light.
And I think the last question for the moment is site drainage.
Yes.
Is that something that's going to be further developed as the landscape plan comes to completion?
Absolutely. And in fact, we actually have, the civil engineers, back in December last year, responded to, NV5's, comments, and, we'll be able to respond, at this point, they'll be responding with a different site plan because we're making concessions, with the arrangement of the parking, and we'd be, it would frankly make a lot more sense to, resolve that as we, resolve, as a condition of approval, before the issuance of the building permit.
Okay, I think that's all my questions for the moment, Dana.
Thank you. And my question is the same as Dave's. I mean, it has to do with the east elevation and the transom windows up there. Are you saying that the light fixtures would hang below those?
Yes.
Okay, and then at nighttime, you really, those rooms are not lighted unless they have to be.
Yeah, the only time the lights are on in there, is as part of a response.
Okay.
And what we're doing in fire stations, all over the Bay Area, is those lights are controlled by, the response mechanism. As an alert goes out, a station is alerted, and the lights gradually come up, to a pretty low level, both inside the fire station and inside the apparatus bay. And once the doors, once the crew exits and the doors close, the lights go out.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I don't have any other questions, so I think that takes care of commissioner questions, which means we are headed for public comment, and I need to pull the list up. Participants scrolling down. Okay, so we're going to start. Here we are at public comment. So the first people up are Kathy, Christy, and John Matlock.
Hi,
And
can you hear
remember
me?
to try to keep your comments concise because we're running late here.
Well, I appreciate that, but we have been listening to
I know.
the viewpoints and opinions, and now you get to listen to the people on all three sides whose property are greatly affected by this. So I request, and I certainly hope that you will give us neighbors a chance to speak our minds and voice our viewpoints as well.
Of course.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Carter, for your viewpoints. I appreciate it. And I know you're all working hard on this project. Mike, I don't understand how you can say this is not adding capacity and extra personnel when you're adding a sheriff's station. There's another sheriff or two, their vehicles. It's a whole nother entity. Now we're not dealing with the town. Now we have, I guess it's the county that has regulations about how a sheriff's station is run. We've got additional vehicles who have more sirens and will be going out. So I take issue with the fact that this is not providing more capacity to the station. We are vastly and heatedly opposed to the sheriff's station. I don't know if the members of the ASCC received our letter of 11 or our email
November 8th.
of November 8th.
I think Dylan put it in today. There was an oversight there.
Yeah, Jeremy apparently neglected to put that in your packet, but I'm just curious, have any of you read our comments about what's going on next door to us, or read the email that we got from a real estate agent today? We did request an appraisal of what would happen to our property given the expansion and the addition of this sheriff station and their personnel and their vehicles and their parking, and how that would affect our property values. I have sold property in Portola Valley in the local office for the last 30 years. I've probably sold 100 properties in Portola Valley. I did ask an opinion of an impressive agent who sold 800 properties on the peninsula. And there is no doubt that this is going to have a negative effect on our property values. Anyone knows that if you sell a house that backs up to a busy school or a car wash or a fire station with an additional sheriff's office added, you are going to have a negative effect on the value of that property. And I have his written statement that it would be anywhere from 10 to 20%. So I just want to go on record as saying we are not agreeing with anything to do with the sheriff's station. And my husband has recently submitted a proposal, which apparently I don't know if the ASCC members have had a chance to read since it was not included in your packet, but there is rental space right around the corner next to the pizza burger place.
Portola Cafe
that's
on Portola.
Good visibility, has parking, has square footage, has a bathroom, and is already in his office space and is for lease currently and does not affect any of the residential properties. I also understand that you do not have a conditional use permit for the sheriff's station. Is that not true? Do you have a conditional use permit for the sheriff's station? Because at the meeting that I was at the architectural or the landscaping meeting, it was made very clear to me by Carter's representative that you do not have a conditional use permit for that sheriff's station. And I'm going to read a paragraph from the conditional use conditions that are set forward by Portola Valley. You are able, these are the highlights, you are able to grant this as long as you ensure the privacy and rural outlook of the surrounding residents. And the proposed use will not adversely affect the abutting properties. This is in the document that describes why you can get a conditional use permit. So clearly the statement that the proposed use will not adversely affect the abutting property, I can tell you, I can get you 100 opinions of value that show that we're going to take a 10 to 20% hit in our property value, particularly with that sheriff's station's door staring into our bedroom windows. And Rob, you know how we feel about this. Mike, we made it very clear at the meeting, and we have not heard anything back in terms of, and hearing tonight that ASCC could possibly move forward with this, and yet no one's addressed our concerns or our issues. And I've had an appraisal done on my property by 2 independent appraisers, and I'm going to have an appraisal done after this project if it goes forward. as proposed. And the difference in my property value is going to come out of, is damages. And there will be litigation about that.
Yeah, we've already have been in contact with the attorney in regards to this. So
You can talk about trees and you can talk about, you know, the color of the paint, but that sheriff's station has got to go.
and go around the corner over Portola Road. Now
Yeah, there's a
it's
perfect,
available right now.
and nobody has gotten back to us about that.
Jeremy has not.
Nobody,
Laura.
well, Jeremy
nobody.
didn't even put our letter in the packet. So,
I just feel there's something's going on
Yeah,
there trying to push this through.
and you know,
And again, we'll take legal action if this comes to
it's, you know, and there's apparently a letter in the packet that's by some neighbor in the community that says, oh, well, she's really for the station. Let's compare apples to apples. The station is not next to her home.
or
The
anybody
sheriff's
else's
station
home.
is not to her home. If they put it next to her home, I'm all for it. I say, great, they can put in a car wash next to her house as far as I'm concerned, not next to my house. And you do not have a conditional use. You do not have a permit for that sheriff's station. And that thing is not going to get just washed under the bridge.
Thank you for your comments, you guys.
I would like some response from the AC. I want a response to my letters.
You'll hear ASCC comments after public comment.
I have an email that we sent in almost a month ago, and no one has ever responded to me. Have you read the email of
November 8th.
11/8?
It was forwarded to us today.
Well, they're
I know, it wasn't in the packet.
exactly my point.
I know.
I need you to review that, and I need you to review the email that we sent you today from a real estate expert whose credentials are quite impressive.
Yes,
and I
we
can
saw
provide
that.
100 more.
We saw that also.
Okay.
I get
Have you read it? Have you read it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Okay, so on record, everybody's read both of those, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's what we need to hear.
Thank you, you guys. So let's move to Bob Schultz, who has his hand up. Do you need to unmute yourself, Bob?
Have I unmuted
There you
myself?
are. Yes, you have.
Great. Hi. So my name is Bob Schultz. My wife is here, Suzanne. We live at 145 Portola Road, which is a flag lot, and it has a border against the Station 8 property. I'm kind of surprised on some of the things we've been hearing here. But I thank everyone for their comments so far. First off, this landscape plan that has just been added was not even in the public packet, right? I mean, we need, the public has the right for 72 hours to review this. In dealing with all of this, we've actually had to go out and hire our own landscape architect, Lisa Moulton. And, you know, at the very least, we need to go and review these things with her. So that right from that point, we'd ask for a continuance on this whole proceedings, right? Because we don't want to be caught with this thing getting passed by piecemeal, right? We can slide in the architectural, the office review here, or we can, you know, that seems okay. We'll come back to the landscaping later, and then everything this kind of gets pushed under the rug and swept through. We really are afraid that that's what's happening here. But I would like to, I did send a letter earlier today. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but I wondered if I could read at least excerpts from it. And so if I can do that, let me do it. And so basically, what we have now currently is, so we are in we are against the southwest corner of the Station 8 lot. We basically have you can look at your packets in page 89 and 90 is the topographical survey that will explain things. But as you can see from that, we currently have redwood trees, some oak trees, and open space that serve as a natural buffer between our home and the fire station. Our front yard and living room windows look directly out towards the fire station. They don't look towards Portola. They look at yeah, thank you. Thank you, Carter. And so, in general, we don't oppose the fire station making modifications necessary to serve the community, but we would suggest that it makes much more sense to place the improvements entirely on the east side. And I know that might be difficult, but it's even more difficult and damaging to impact the neighbors' property values on the south and west side. So I would like to, if you look at page 10 of the staff report, they note that there's the section 1864-60 outlines criteria and findings for approval of architectural and site development review applications. There's 9 findings. We would like to point out 3. In finding number 4, which is landscaping, screening, and fencing preserve privacy and mitigate adverse effects on neighboring properties, we'd like to comment that we believe that the physical improvements coupled with removal of vegetation, all of those redwood trees, will have an adverse effect on our property. Where we essentially have a grove of redwoods now, we will have parking areas that not only serve a fire department, but also a sheriff's substation, which is a complete jump in the intensity of use. And that results in different end users and activity. And as it seems like the fire station is suggesting that hedges and things would be used in place of the natural vegetation that was there. But hedges and opaque fencing are not consistent with the design criteria in Portola Valley. Preservation of existing mature trees in a national setting is, and we should preserve that. Also, landscaping is inextricably linked to the overall project and should not be evaluated in isolation. And the fact that we haven't officially seen these plans within 72 hours means that, again, we would ask for a continuation of the whole ASCC meeting. There's also been no screening plan that properly addresses noise. There's going to be a lot more noise here. This is not a quiet. The fire engines are circling in and out quite a lot, right? We hear chainsaws and horn testing on Sundays or Sunday mornings sometimes. There's lots of car washing going on in the pad in front. So we're concerned that there will be even more noise with the sheriff involvement and more parking in that back corner. So finding 6. Which says night lighting is located in fixtures chosen to promote public safety but minimize effects on adjoining properties. So we acknowledge that the proposed lighting is dark sky compatible, but our concern is that future parking lot lighting where a light source is elevated, and we would request a prohibition on any additional outdoor lighting. Additionally, with the proposed replacement of the groves of redwoods for parking, the screening of the interior lighting onto our property will no longer be shielded and would result in a negative effect on our property. Additionally, the submitted plans and renderings show that the personnel doors and apparatus bay doors have large glass windows, which are much larger than the existing windows. This is in addition to already large windows that exist between the roof line and the doors. Such large windows increase light leakage considerably, especially with the loss of screening from tree removal. Finding 7. Finding 7 says planning and site design mitigates the problems of drainage and soil erosion. We have met multiple times with representatives from the fire department relative to drainage concerns in the vicinity of our shared property line. I don't know if you guys can, well, we have a photo of what it is in my letter I sent today, but we could actually share our screen if that's possible.
I believe we've all seen it.
Okay, great. But basically there's puddling is common and overflow onto our property has occurred. We also note that the letter of October 10th, 2019 from NV5 implies that the stormwater is not adequately addressed. Additionally, the notes of the January 2nd Conservation Committee meeting note that there is too much impervious surface for the property. The staff report does not provide the amount of existing or proposed impervious surface. Given this, coupled with the removal of mature landscaping to accommodate the new bay, ring road, and the parking, we are not certain that the site design will mitigate problems of drainage as opposed to actually exacerbating them. As I said before, we have actually felt the need now to go and hire our own landscape architect to help us evaluate the fire department's proposed plans. The meeting notes that from one of the neighborhood meetings said that we had not provided input relative to what we want, but we have been providing input. We would like existing mature vegetation preserved and the parking and development moved away. We are not landscape architects or designers, and we cannot prepare the plan. So and maybe finally here, I would point out that the sheriff substation was not mentioned in the staff report, but such an addition would bring new noise, light, flashing lights, headlights, idling cars, talking. It definitely requires more parking, which we don't want, public traffic, and then potential danger from arrestees or firearms. I mean, these are all real considerations. And if you look at section 1864 10B of the Portola Valley Municipal Code, and look at that, what that calls out, this substation would create, one, a negative impact to the stability of land values and investments. I mean, that's our property value. Our home is a significant investment to us, and it's going to be damaged if a sheriff is allowed to exist on the fire station. And two, it creates an addition, and I quote from the code, an addition which is not properly related to their sites, which is fire service, and adjacent uses, which is all the residential neighbors. It is difficult that I write this letter and speak on this application, as we truly do appreciate the fire department and Chief Rob and all the staff. In general, we feel they've been good neighbors, and we want to continue that. But we believe the expansion to service the fire department can be accommodated while meeting all these above findings. However, the current design just does not meet that. Does not make the required findings. So,
thank you for your comments, Bob.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess in summary, I would say that we have spoke with the WFPD relative to the expansion. They have sent us plans, but nothing has been. This is. It seems like we really need much more work on this set of plans and the landscape, and this is so premature to be given to the ASCC for review.
Thank you.
So we ask for continuance, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Valerie Baldwin. Are you muted? Valerie? Unmute yourself. Are you there? Shall we move to Judith? Someone's there. Valerie?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yes, I'm right directly behind the Ramey's garage, and I'm a little concerned about all these outside lights that are being put into the plan. I don't think they were on the plans that were at the neighborhood meeting, Zoom meeting that you had recently. I was just wondering if you're going to be turning the lights, have automatic lights turning on and off inside the building to stop there from being glowing in lights. What about the outside lights? We had a problem sometime back when Ram Ramey's garage was built, and the skylights on the top of the garage were glowing at night in our backyard. And we complained to the town, and they worked out a deal with Ron to have the lights off by 6 p.m. And I was just wondering if we could have the same thing where there's very few cars going in the turnaround in the back, why the lights need to be on all the time.
Okay. Any other comments, Valerie?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Judith, you're up.
Okay, I just unmuted myself. I would like to say that I hope that the Conservation Committee review of the landscaping plan does not get skipped. That's usually a part of the progress of plans as they work their way through town. And it's a fairly small landscaping plan, but what I notice is missing. The previous plans all had details about front. The current plan says, you know, everything stays the same in out front. And out front, of course, is a very public front garden that's on the scenic corridor and really should be included in the landscaping review. So I hope, especially since we haven't seen the new plan at all, except on screen here as Carter put it up. We in general spend more time looking at the tiny details of landscaping than you folks have an opportunity to, just because you're involved in every detail of it, and all we have to do is the landscaping. For example, I think the concern about the amount of impervious coverage, that the idea that you might do wheels only paths back there where now you have a full driveway would help mitigate the problem with how much impervious surface there is, and soften the look of things back there. So I just appreciate conservation being able to have a chance to look at this formally. Thank you.
Thank you. Jan?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Oh, good.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I've been listening, and all I can say is I just feel like I would like to be able to see the plan more complete, especially the landscaping portion of the plan. And I second what Bob Schultz has asked, to postpone a final review, a final judgment of the ASCC until we can see the full plan. So that's my first request. And secondly, I just am dismayed to find that so little attention has been paid to the 3 neighbors' request to put parking on the commercial side of the building. No one has even talked about the possibilities. I know Chief Rob has mentioned that it would be more difficult. And I know one of the reasons that it would be more difficult is because the exit road from the fire station on a call is in that direction. It would be against the flow of traffic. But I have suggested the possibility that traffic be reversed. And if Rob would comment on how much, I don't know if that causes enormous difficulties, but to me, that would solve the problem. Put all the parking on the commercial side. Instead, there's a change in where the parking was put before. I can understand the Schultz's dismay at seeing the parking the way it was before, and to reduce the parking over there by 2 is a good thing. But the way they have readjusted things makes it far worse for me, far, far worse for me. As I've put out in my commentary, I live on a flag lot, very limited views. Front and rear is only 20 feet. Then there's the utility side, which has 10 feet. All of my aesthetic is to that side of the property where we have a backyard, extensive gardening space, and the parking is right off our area where we would be all the time outside. In the summer, good weather, even in the winter time, entertaining, working, gardening. Every car coming and going, we would hear their doors slam, the people talking, the radios. It's just not a very acceptable place. And again, I urge you to consider the possibility of the commercial side of the fire station. And I have also walked in the front of the building, the fire station, there's room for at least 4 or 5 parking spaces in the front of the building. And I don't know why they couldn't be utilized. They're there, they could be utilized, and it wouldn't harm any neighbors. The kind of conversation that's been going on here doesn't address the terrible loss of property values that we will suffer. And I think I will suffer in particular. I have the largest frontage on the property, and I'm closest to the new additions. And I hate to bring up this privacy screen because it's been ignored the whole time. I depend on that privacy screen. It screened the present fire station beautifully. The new appliance garage, it will screen it perfectly. Removing that landscaping will put nothing between us, nothing. New plants take decades to provide adequate screening. I'm 82 years old. I don't have decades to wait for my property to retain some of its value. I really think that the access road is a nicety rather than a necessity. I know it's a nicety. I understand the reason for it, but the fire department has been using other alternatives for years, perhaps decades, and I just don't see the need for it to be there. It's going to introduce noise, firelight, headlights. It's going to require the reduction of the present privacy screen. I've spent 40 years growing that private privacy screen to protect my property values, and I just can't see it going just like that for an access road. It just doesn't seem an important trade-off to me. I'm going to lose a quarter of the value of my property, on that. Realtors, I've spoken with several, have told me I will take a very significant hit in my property. I already am at a disadvantage because I'm a flag lot. I can't afford any further disadvantages. And I really, really, really want that access road to go. I don't see how important it is. I really, really don't. And I'm returning to the parking places off my view area of my property. I think they need to be moved somewhere else. I just feel very strongly about that it's not a good place to put them in terms of a budding property, the rural aspect, the noise, the headlight pollution, everything. It's just not a good solution.
Thanks, Jan.
Also addressing the lighting, I don't like the fact that there's windows on the new appliance garage. That's going to be directly affecting me. No landscaping. Talk about leaking lights. It's going to be blasting lights. I think that path lighting would be a far better solution. Anyway, I again request a continuance on the ASCC. I think more time needs to be spent on this process.
Thank you, Jan. So I don't see any other hands up. And so, Kathy Christie, you want to speak again? Hello?
Hi. Hi, Dana. This is John Matlock, Kathy's husband. So just one last question, and I'll be brief. And it's actually probably more for Dylan, but also for the ASCC, since they're part of this whole equation. As far as a conditional use permit, has one been issued for the sheriff's department by the town?
I can't answer that, but I don't think it has. But Dylan, do you know that?
CUP has not been issued for the sheriff's department. It would have to be considered by the planning commission at an upcoming meeting.
Okay, so what is your position, Laura, as well as Jeremy and the town? You guys are going to try to push for the sheriff addition with increased capacity and everything we've already stated?
We don't have a position on that, and we have not completed the analysis or drafted any findings for the planning commission to consider.
Okay,
so all of that analysis is still upcoming.
Okay, and then lastly, have you or Jeremy or Dylan looked into the retail space right around the corner for the sheriff, which is a perfect 700 square foot place with a bathroom? great visibility on the corner of Alpine and Portola Road with sheriff and parking.
That's not their position. And so let's move to the next question.
And I just, one more thing through the chair. We did respond, Jeremy did respond to the email of 11/8 and Jeremy responded on 11/9 to kind of clarify staff's role and position. So if there's further confusion about that, we'd be happy to talk about it offline, but we wouldn't get involved in those kinds of private leasing issues.
Right. Thank you, Laura. Let's see, Bob Schultz, you have a final question?
Yeah, I do, and I will be brief. And again, I thank all the commissioners and everyone present. I just wanted to make a comment. There was some comments about the lights are automatically dimmed and very low when there's no activity. But really, that's not true at all. I think if you see the light, or I'm sorry, the photo in my email today, that is the typical light output of all through Windows, and it will be even more of that once the new apparatus bay is built. I also wanted to make a point or mention that Mike had mentioned there was not going to be any staff increases or additional vehicle increases, yet we're having 13 parking spaces, which is quite an increase from the existing parking. I just don't understand why we really need so much. I mean, we don't want to turn the station into a parking lot, right? I would ask that really be looked at closely. And in fact, there's also 2 ADA spots listed. Someone asked earlier about that. I believe one of those doesn't have to be marked as ADA, the electric spot. It just has to be built for ADA, but not necessarily marked for that. So that would remove another spot, or we could remove another spot. And in addition, if sheriff's was not there, the parking obviously requirements would be lowered as well. I think that is that's it.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, with that, I'm going to close public comment and return to the commission. And we are now going to take commission comments. And I'm wondering if Al, if you could start us off.
I certainly can. Yeah, it was a very interesting discussion. It's good to hear from Carter and Chief Linden, and then also from the neighbors. Certainly a different perspective and some strong feelings. Let me go through how I see things. I've got just a kind of a whole long list of things that I'll touch upon. So it may take a little bit, but hopefully it'll address the relevant issues. I think that the general plan of increasing adding a apparatus garage is reasonable, and increasing and improving the station is reasonable. I think that my recommendation would be to the Planning Commission that it is okay to exceed the floor area limit in light of the public safety benefit to the community. I do think that we could consider a special condition that, no occupancy or use of the additional space would be allowed until all the landscaping, fencing, etc. would be completed. I know that was a sore subject from previous development work on this site. And I think that it's important that whatever is approved is actually completed in a timely manner. I think that the height proposed is reasonable for the intended use. And I think that the general appearance and the materials and finishes are fine. I do think that a key part of this is going to be to preserve as much existing screening as possible to minimize the impact. Let's see. I definitely don't like the trash enclosure in the back. I guess that there's the proposal now that's floating around that's moved that. There was a lot of problems with that spot, I think. And so moving it away from there, I don't know if the proposal is the right spot, but at least getting it from where it was, I think is reasonable. I definitely do not like the parking in the back southwest corner. I don't like the extra access road in the back. I think that it's going to be incumbent upon the design team to get creative and figure out how to not have those things. I think that they are really killers for this project. Let's see. I am concerned about the impervious area, and I'm disappointed that we're not addressing that at this point. I don't think that we can approve this project or recommend this project without having real numbers for that. It doesn't seem to me that it's reasonable for it to be a add-on with just 1 or 2 ASCC members reviewing it at a later date. I don't like light fixture C. I don't like the placement of it. I don't think it's needed if there's no access road, and I don't think that there should be an access road there. Light fixture D, its placement and that fixture seemed fine to me. The new landscape plan that we got, I think, is an improvement, but it's still got big issues from my point of view. It's still got the access road. I think it needs to be relooked at. I don't believe we got a view of what the proposed fence would look like either. I mean, I think that that's something that just as a matter of course, we should be reviewing also. I agree with some of the comments that there should be more effort made to look at parking along the Ramey's garage side of the property. I thought that the Conservation Committee comments were well thought out and they should be paid attention to. Eliminating the gated back driveway, more detail on the front landscaping. I thought there was good suggestions in that document for improvements in the landscape plan. I think there needs to be more focus on high pervious surface, on the high impervious surface, beyond the limited use of the pervious concrete. And I agree with their tree removal comments. Let's see. I really think that the design team needs to be a little bit more creative in terms of, does it make sense to make the one-way road wider? Does it make sense to turn it into, to reverse the direction? I mean, just, try to think a little bit outside the box. I know that what you've proposed is very reasonable from your point of view, but I think that it is very impactful to the neighbors. And I think that their complaints are valid. Let's see. So if I was going to kind of let me talk a little bit about my view on the findings. I don't think there's any problem with finding 1, minimize disturbance on the natural terrain. That's fine. Clearly, finding 2 is not met. Existing vegetation preserved to the maximum possible. I don't think there's any way we could say that that's happening. 3, structured as designed and located for light and airflow. Fine, no problem there. 4, landscaping preserves privacy and mitigates adverse effect on neighbors. Nope, I don't think it does. 5, enhance exit traffic flow promoted, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I think that one's in conflict with items 2 and 4. In this case, you could say maybe that one is in very good shape and we might have to bend on that one a little bit to address items 2 and 4 a little better. Night lighting promotes safety but minimizes neighbor impact. I think mostly it's okay, but we do need to get rid of a couple of those fixtures along the back of the building. Planning and site design mitigate drainage issues. That one is unclear. I think that it'd be tough to approve the plan at this point without a better handle on that. And then the last couple in terms of materials and colors and proposed grading, I think both of those are fine. So I don't think we're at a point yet where we could say that the findings are all met. At least I couldn't. Summary, the basic concept of the proposed changes to the station and the addition of a new apparatus garage, I'm in favor of. I am against the back access road and locating parking in the southwest corner. I think we need a new landscape plan with modified roads and parking. I think that there's an argument to be made that the sheriff's substation should be eliminated. I hadn't realized that was such a hot button, but from the comments, it's clearly a significant issue for the neighbors, and it didn't seem like Chief Linden was particularly attached to it, and didn't seem like it was that big of a deal. So, I think that it's certainly worth considering eliminating that. Let's see. I guess I've talked long enough. That's my comments.
Thanks, Al. That was great. Okay, Jane, you want to go next?
All right, thank you. I looked into the general plan Nathorst Triangle and looked at the principles, namely 6106, which was C, non-residential uses shall not adversely affect nearby residential property. D, noise, sight, odor and other nuisances shall be held to a reasonable minimum. F, structures designed so that all sides are attractive. And H, equipment noises and emissions shall be minimized. And so the only finding that I can agree with that I'm seeing at the moment is number 8, which is that I like the materials and colors. I am totally against building in anything into the setbacks, and we've got the access road going into it. We've got the trash enclosure going into it. We've got the 4 parking spaces going into it, and they've all been designed within that 20-foot setback from the property line. There was another thing in the Nathorst Triangle plan that said that on 6107, which said that the Alpine and Portola roads may need to be widened. Now, I don't know whether that would cause the neighbours even more concerns or whether that's something that could be considered when redoing the plans. I did think that the buildings could be more compacted and closer together, but obviously Carter's said that a second story wasn't even considered. And I find it rather odd that the only 3 trees that the neighbour, Mrs. Mountjoy, requested to disappear, redwood wise, are the ones that they're saying can stay. So I'm rather concerned about the landscape plan. Well, I'm really concerned about the landscape plan. I think it needs to be looked at again and studied with the neighbours. So I'm basically going for recommendation 2, which is for a future meeting, because I think a lot more thought needs to be put into compacting, condensing as much as possible so that the neighbours aren't so adversely affected. So that's the position I'm currently in. And I'd also like to note that the parking really is a moot point at the moment because the Planning Commission needs to change that CUP. So I'm not sure that we should be considering parking so much at this time. And also Planning Commission needs to stipulate that spaces are for institutional use, which the CUP currently doesn't say. So that's the position where I'm in at the moment.
Thank you, Jane. Dave?
You're muted, Dave.
What? Oh, Dave's muted. Gotcha.
There, sorry.
You go.
Didn't want to interrupt everybody with my dog barking. Dana knows that sound. I had a lot more comments before Al and Jane spoke. So I'll try to just touch very briefly on the items of agreement and then add a couple of things. I want to start out though by saying that it sounds to me like one of the major concerns of the neighbors is the potential for a sheriff's substation there. And I don't really understand that as being part of the application that we're considering right now. It's, as I understand it, it's a concept that's been discussed. It doesn't really, I mean, I don't see it on the plan, for example. So that may be a Rosanna Dana moment for anybody who remembers the early years of Saturday Night Live.
Never mind.
It's an oh, never mind, because it's not in this application. So that's to the extent people have concerns about its inclusion and impact, that's not something that I believe is on our agenda, strictly speaking, here tonight. I'm also troubled by I'm aligned with Al the issues of the building construction appear to me to be basically fine. The site plan and landscape plan, I believe, need quite a bit of work, even without consideration of changes to the site plan in relation for the traffic, the vehicles. The status of the landscape design, buffering, fence, irrigation, site drainage, all of those issues I see as being incomplete enough as to require a return to the full ASCC. But we face a little bit of a dilemma here, which is that another ASCC review may not even be necessary if issues before the Planning Commission get worked out. So my recommendation would be that we go ahead and move this on to the Planning Commission, but with the requirement that it come back for another full ASCC review, assuming the Planning Commission works out its issues on this project first. No reason to bring the applicants back again to us after more plan development if in fact the Planning Commission is going to shoot it down. And I think the fastest way to get those issues in front of the town is to refer it on to the Planning Commission. So maybe at slight variance with other commissioners' thoughts on that, but I don't think it serves any of us to defer those higher level considerations for more plan development from us. I think we can forward this for their review with obviously our transcript and our concerns about the circulation on the site and the buffering and mitigation of the landscape. And with the requirement that it come back to us for a full review. Carter mentioned a lighting control system to prevent light spillage at night, where lights get shut off automatically when the doors close after emergency response, and that lights in the apparatus bays are not left on into the evening. That the photograph from the Schultz property was illustrative of what kind of light one could expect from all of the equipment bays. And if this project moves forward, I'd recommend retrofitting a system like the one he described to control the light from the existing facility, or to find some way to mitigate that issue. I'm always concerned when there are a lot of windows facing nearby properties, or when there's a potential for light spill at night. And I recognize that there may be maintenance that's required. There's certainly post call out requirements that will need lights. Maybe there's a system of shades that would be available, but something to prevent the amount of light spill that I think is quite possible and maybe even very likely, both from the existing facility and the new one. Let me just check my list here. One thing about the 4 parking spaces in the southwest corner, I understand Chief Linder's description of the vehicle storage needs. But perhaps those are spaces that in an ultimate escape plan could be held in reserve. They could be landscaped in the meantime. And if there is in fact a demand for the overflow parking, those spaces could be developed and in a somewhat less formal way than the rest of the spaces. In other words, a semi-paved or gravel area, or even a grassy area where vehicles could be parked. But I could see that being a real problem as a set of regular parking spaces. So I think they should either be moved or held in reserve to see if the requirement actually manifests. I live 2 blocks from the fire station. I get to see it a lot. And except in the old days when voting was hosted there, and much appreciated, thank you. I used to do my voting there. I've never seen the parking lot anywhere near full. And I recognize that some spaces are going away because of the addition, but I think sufficient parking spaces can be found around the site without currently developing the ones at the rear. To my way of thinking, those are probably the greatest practical impact on neighboring properties. I think that pretty much covers, oh, the trash enclosure. I agree. I don't believe that should be on the rear property line.
Yeah, we're moving that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
move it.
And really for 2 reasons, but since you're moving it, I'll be brief. But one is it can become unsightly and smelly, over the course of a week. And the second one is just access for garbage trucks. It's one more noisy thing to happen back there.
Yeah, we're just, that's moved.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're changing the way that garbage service happens on the site, going to residential bins.
Okay, great. I have faith that a good geotech and civil engineers will address the site drainage issues adequately. I'm not concerned about that. And that's all my comments.
Thank you, Dave. Really interesting point about moving this to the Planning Commission to get their feedback first. I mean, it certainly needs to come back to ASCC. I mean, the landscape plan is insufficient, inappropriate screening. So all of that needs to come back. And again, like Dave says, I don't have any problem with exceeding the floor limits. I think the floor area, I think the building is good, but there's too much else that is problematic. The parking spaces in the back, I feel like parking could be massaged parallel parking onto the Ramey side. So I think this needs to be reworked, but I would really love to see the Planning Commission answer these questions, because I think it is the most effective way to proceed. And so throwing that to you guys to see how we can do that. What kind of language can we use to move this forward for the Planning Commission to look at the CUP?
Well, I think they're going to do that anyway. I think that's the main reason for
But
them
it
to see
needs
it.
to come back to us.
Yes, and I think that as we craft a motion, I'm comfortable with a condition that says this must return to ASCC, assuming the planning is worked out, that if before the project moves forward to the building permit application phase, that it return to ASCC for review. Now, I'm also comfortable recommending or stating that we're comfortable with the building design issues and the floor area question, but with some fine tuning to things like windows, lighting controls, exterior lighting, and of course the circulation and landscaping issues.
Yes. So
I think that's a good approach.
Yep. So can we take a crack at some language?
Does this mean that does this mean that there would only be one further ASCC meeting about this? Because I didn't mention all the little things that I thought were relevant, because this is a big issue with me, that with the whole design. So looking at things like the blinds and the lights, I didn't even look at so much, because there's so much more still to be done.
We need to do a thorough look at this after the fact, after the Planning Commission gives their feedback.
Right, so, but
Assuming, Laura, that we can do that. I mean, Dave, you asked the question. We can ask for this to come back to ASCC for a
Right.
total review.
You may guess that that's why I asked the question.
Yes.
but once or twice, can we ask it to come back?
We
Well-
can ask as many times as we want.
Okay.
The way I anticipate this working is that if it gets cleared through the hurdles at the Planning Commission, then it's subject to further ASCC review. And if it's not approvable at that point, or with conditions that might require review by a member or even the full commission, I think that's up to us at that point.
Right.
So I don't
Yep.
think we need to ask the Planning Commission for 1 or 2 or 3 more reviews. I think we just stipulate that it returns to us after the Planning Commission has made its rulings.
And then if we feel that it needs another review after we've had that one after the Planning Commission, we can ask for that too.
Well, I think it would basically default to our normal process. So if the plan wasn't approvable at that point, then we'd either not approve it or approve it with conditions. Just as we normally would. Nobody has a guarantee of getting through the ASCC when they come to us. So it would be the same situation we normally see.
Right. But normally
I do, the chair, I do have some ideas, but I don't know if we also want to hear from Carter on his feedback on the proposed process to help us to decide.
Carter?
Hi, I like the process. This is an important public project, and the mission, of the Woodside Fire Protection District is of extraordinary importance to the town of Portola Valley and its area of influence. I don't want to delay the implementation, of an improvement project. This has been, into the town for about a year already. The issues, that we're talking about today, going to the Planning Commission, I think are, extraordinarily important, and it wouldn't make sense, to spend additional public treasure, because the treasure of the Woodside Fire Protection District is the same as the Portola Valley treasure. So it's the same constituency. So going to the Planning Commission at this point, to deal with kind of the big issues of floor area, paved area, how much parking, versus how much not parking, and how much can be, parking in reserve because it's open land, versus areas that need to be planted. I think there needs to be a value judgment about, whether parking in the front yard setback, is something that's preferable to parking that's in the rear setback. The original plan of the station, didn't have any parking out there, and to start to think about, what that parking need is and whether it's going to move out to the road would follow the paradigm of all of the other commercial properties, but it hasn't been followed here. But I do think that moving this, on a macro project says, that the apparatus bay, the turnout room, the door, the bedrooms, office space makes sense. And I do think, opining about, whether, a sheriff should have an office there is something that the ASCC should opine about too. Because we're, as an applicant, we're getting mixed messages. From the broader town, the sheriff, having an office there, has been publicly supported. At the micro scale, with the neighbors, it's very clear that it's not supported at all. But the process of going to the Planning Commission at this point to get through all of those, issues, and maybe not receiving an approval from the planning commission, but a recommendation, that yes, we could make those, we could probably make those findings. And then we come back and resolve those issues, all of the issues with the ASCC, and then go back to the planning commission, to finalize the use permit, is something that, in the history of Portola Valley, that's been a pretty normal process where it's been a bit iterative, and I think, some of our neighbors, in this area, I've been around long enough to reflect on that kind of, design review history, rather than trying to get it all perfect before we come to you. So I'm really happy to, to take the project to the planning commission, kind of the way it is, where there's still some elements that are moving, but that, we've gained ASCC support for, the program of the project, and I like the concept of potentially having, some of that parking, in reserve, which has been a regular thing, on the commercial properties where there's open land, set aside that could become parking in case it's needed.
Thank you, Carter. So coming back to the commission again, Dave, can we crank out some language here?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we refer this project to the planning commission for consideration of the relevant issues before them, with general support from the ASC for the building program, the building design, and exceedance of the floor area as required for the building design. That assuming that the project gets passed through the planning commission, it returned to the ASCC for consideration of the revised application based on our discussion today. I don't know that they care, period. Yes, I don't think it's too relevant to them at this point that we really enumerate all of our issues. They can certainly read the minutes if they're interested in that. But yes, Carter.
I have a kind of a programming question. If, the district, found that they had a larger storage need, if that apparatus bay addition, turned into a 2-bay apparatus bay addition, instead of having the drive around, would the ASCC still support that, program? So I'm suggesting that instead, instead of stopping where we're at 18 feet from, the setback, as if we continue to the setback.
I'd have a hard time supporting that. That starts to really impact the back neighbors.
I would also have a problem with that. Well, I have a problem with the current one.
But it would be inside the setback.
Yeah. But,
And-
if you
and
look at the
we-
findings require, us to consider impact on neighbors.
Well, Al, I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm suggesting that there may be two things that would be parked outside that now would be parked inside.
Well, we'll have to look at it, at
Well,
some.
I'm right now, I'm thinking about all of these things and trying to develop, kind of a pattern of solutions. And I don't think we want, a bunch of parking out in front of this building. And we're trying to eliminate parking, in the corners where there's open space. And I'm trying to figure out how and where to put these things. And the wall of the building, whether it's 38 feet or 20 feet, is pretty close to the same thing. And it's probably,
No, it's not really close to the same thing. It's
But you
it's
know
pretty
what?
significantly
I'm gonna
different.
move us-
well,
I'm
if
gonna
those
move us
redwoods
along.
still remain.
So
Okay, but
Dave,
the
let's
plan that
keep
got presented
going.
is the redwoods wouldn't be there.
Well, I know, and I'm indulging the ASCC to try to talk about, some things that, could potentially, be adjusted as we go forward.
Okay.
And because I haven't got an application that says any of these things yet.
Okay.
and I'm
Well,
trying to,
let's save that for another meeting because we got to move it along.
I get
So-
it, but I was trying to utilize
I know.
this forum to try to think creatively about, because Al has said, you've got to be creative. So now I'm trying to use my creativity and get some lifeline response.
Well, Carter,
Yeah.
I wish we'd had an opportunity to talk about this a year ago,
I agree.
or even longer than that. We could have massaged it, and I don't think we'd be where we are now.
Yeah,
But
I
keep
do
my
think,
hands
I
off of
do
that
know
one.
know that we need to remind ourselves that the mission of the fire station is very important.
Yes.
So
And
we
that-
Oh,
all,
yeah.
we all agree about the mission of the fire station and the sheriffs, but when this affects the neighbours so much, that's where we're having the issues. And we haven't really got a complete plan for them to be able to help. So I think that's why we need to see it again.
I want you to see it again. And I enjoy working with the ASCC, on a more iterative process. And I think it would be, on this one in particular, would have been enormously helpful.
Or a charrette even.
Thank you.
betcha. I love
Okay,
the
you
word.
guys, back to Dave.
Okay, I'm happy to second Dave's motion.
Is that motion complete? Yes, it was period. All right. So-
Yes, I might add, just so that planning commissioners don't have to read all the minutes, that there are several of the findings that we would have difficulty making at this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's really the reason it needs to return to us.
Thank you. So that needs to be an amended motion. So
Okay,
Al, are
I'll
you going
second
to-
it.
You'll second that motion. Okay,
Yes.
all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed, so the motion carries and this will be,
No, I'm opposed.
you're opposed.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Okay, so motion carries at 3-1 and it will go to the planning commission and come back to us.
So should we give Jane a chance to say why she's opposed?
Sure.
Well, because I feel that there's so many elements of this design that are wrong that I loath to send it to planning because I don't know quite what they're going to be able to do with it, apart from decide on institutional and parking and
Well, that's the two key things are they going to approve the floor area and what kind of parking requirement? Those
But
two
what if
things
they
are
did?
key.
But what if they
What's
did
that?
that? If they did that, then we haven't got any comeback for the neighbours who are obviously very upset at the moment about what's happening, which they feel is being forced through, which they're saying.
No, we do have a comeback. They have to come back to us with a plan for us to approve. So
But-
there's no way this goes on
but
without
we don't know how many
our
times.
approving.
We're not finessing it. I mean, normally our last meeting would be finessing it, would be something like, we don't like that light bulb, put adjustable automatic blinds in. To me, this is a very big design flaw in a number of areas. And so I wouldn't like to be in the planning commission's shoes for making the decisions.
But all they're going to evaluate is the floor area and the parking. I mean, that's all that I think they should be evaluating. They
Well,
shouldn't be looking at the landscaping at all.
There's the access road, there's the trash enclosure, there's the extra parking.
That's our purview. That's not their purview. Yeah,
Well,
those
it's
I agree.
traffic.
Those are all messed up, but those aren't planning commission issues. We don't need to look at those things if they come back and say, well, we're not even going to approve the floor area, right? So, let's make sure that they're going to go along with those big issues. What kind of floor area? And then the design team needs to know how many parking spaces they really have to have. Because I don't want Carter to go off and figure out how to put 13 parking spaces in if the planning's going to require 16 or if they're going to require 8, right?
But-
So let's get the real number.
But normally, to my mind, they're dealing with issues like institutional, the CUP. They're not dealing with the small things, and
Right.
we do. So, but we're not even. I'm not even a quarter of the way there, let alone.
Right. Oh, that's fine. But
So that's why
there is an
no.
issue in terms of we can't move forward really without knowing, are they going to approve the floor area?
Yeah.
And the design team can't move forward with parking if we don't know how many parking spaces they're going to acquire.
That's
Those
right.
are the two issues that we really need to get resolved from the planning commission.
Right.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But I voted no because
Okay.
I've got my
Right.
concerns.
So the motion is passed. So this is going to the planning commission.
All right. I think that's good.
All right,
See you soon.
Thanks, Carter.
Carter.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
All right,
Thanks,
thank
Chief.
you, everybody.
Yep.
All right, so that is over and we'll be
Everybody.
moving on shortly to the ASCC, looking at Rosati's. But I'm going to be recusing myself from that item, so I would like to move the minutes forward very quickly. If anybody has any feelings about the minutes, I would like to say that pardon?
I have no feelings about the minutes.
Well, I really appreciated the minutes and the emphasis on the instructive emphasis I was trying to layer on my 2 agenda items that night. I think these minutes would really be an interesting read for Portola Valley residents to understand the history of the ASCC process. I was surprised that a council member report several nights later suggesting my agenda item was born out of dissatisfaction with the process. I see these items as a vision for constructive change. And as we all experienced at that meeting, we were able to come up with some really good ideas for change for the ASCC and planning staff working relationship. So some of these ideas are already in the works. And while it can be uncomfortable at times, this is how progress happens. And this is a dialectic in motion and democracy at work. And I think that those minutes are very interesting and I hope people read them. So what do you
I
guys?
thought they captured the meeting very well.
I agree.
Yes, I did too. So anyone want to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Danis, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So minutes are approved. Dave Ross is going to be taking over now and I'm leaving the meeting.
Thanks, Dana.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dana. All right, folks, we're on to item 2 of our regular agenda. And this is for the architectural review of a trellis with seasonal cover in the outdoor seating area at 3915 Alpine Road, Alpine Inn, AKA Rosati's or Zot's. And Laura, do you have a presentation for this?
I just have a few very brief remarks. Thank you. You're all very familiar with the project and you will all recall that last year you approved a seasonal tent so that they could have outdoor seating at this location, and then had an amendment to that as things evolved. And the tent worked reasonably well, but we knew that it was not a permanent solution and it left open a setback issue. And so the application that's before you tonight is a permanent solution to this issue. It is a trellis. It's 864 square feet in area, 9 feet, 10 inches high. That's the same height as the adjacent storage structure that's already in place. They're proposing it to have a rustic wood appearance that would blend in with the existing structures on site. And then it would have corrugated metal roofing that would match the storage structure. And that would be installed only a portion of the year when they really need that coverage. So they're proposing 90 days of the year to be allowed to have that cover, and they would take it off for the rest of the year. It does comply with the setback requirements, so it solves that previous issue that we had with the temporary solution. So staff would recommend that you consider the number of lights that are proposed and whether you think that's appropriate. We would remind you that the site is undergoing a complete lighting approval. So it is a little bit challenging sometimes to see this in two separate pieces, but the applicant has worked with staff in order to do that. And the delay was almost completely related to COVID. So we do feel optimistic that we'll be able to reach a resolution on the overall lighting plan for the site. It also includes a permanent solution for gas heaters, which is preferred to the temporary heaters that move around the site that are always some concern for safety for various different reasons. So we do find that to be a positive change to improve safety at the site over time. Underneath this trellis area is proposed to be a boardwalk of 2x4 redwood with 3/16 inch spacing. So there would still be allowed, water to go through that in terms of a pervious surface. So the questions really before the commission in my mind are whether the lighting is appropriate, whether the structure design and appearance is appropriate, and whether the commission has any questions or concerns related to the corrugated metal roofing that would be proposed up to 90 days per year. So that concludes my very brief presentation. The applicant is here and may wish to say a few things, and I'm sure can answer questions as well.
Thank you, Laura. Before we go to the applicant, commissioners, do you have any questions for Laura?
No.
No questions.
Okay, let's hear from the applicant. Greg?
Good evening, everybody. This is Deke Hunter.
Oh, hey, Deke.
How are you, Dave? Nice to see you. And I actually enjoyed ASC and other public hearings. I'm actually in two tonight at the same time, but I found the first topic so interesting since I grew up in Portola Valley and Woodside that I had somebody else stand in for me in Sunnyvale tonight. So thank you for it. I'll go through this properly paced. Last year, as Laura pointed out, when we came in for a tent to deal with our seasonal issues, Dave actually brought up a really good issue, and Laura's brought this up over time too. With time, we know more about ourselves, and is there a permanent solution? And the challenges that we had with the tent, it was the only good thing we got out of COVID. The tent was going to be made in Wuhan, China, and the tent never came. And that's why we amended it to a rental tent for a little bit of last year. But with the rental tent or a permanent tent, either way, a number of issues came up. The setback issue to the riparian corridor was an issue. And then basically the bright sky was the other dominant issue. Staff is correct. We did submit a revised lighting plan consistent, we think, with the policy of dark sky. And we've made all the adjustments consistent with that submittal that we made a few months ago. And if there are any questions to that, we will address those when it hits the front of your desk. But tonight, the idea that was sort of, I have to say, seated at ARC was this idea of a permanent fix, and that was this trellis system. The trellis for us will have the historic look. It's modest in its size. It fits within the setback. It allows us to hang lights from it, so they're aiming down. It allows us to hang heaters, which are aiming down. And then it affords us the ability seasonally to use a corrugated metal roof consistent to what's on the shed buildings to give us some protection. In COVID, which hopefully we're not at this next year, we couldn't even use a tent this year, and we would be forced to close. And as we know, sadly enough, we lost another restaurant in Portola Valley just this last week with Portola Valley Kitchen closing. So for us, the idea of this modest trellis does allow us to keep roughly about a third of our seating in the beer garden covered when the heavier rains come. It gives us protection from the sun and affords us to address the other initiatives that have been detailed. So with that, I'll answer any questions anybody would like to ask of me.
Thank you, Deke. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
I have one question. Is there something magical about 90 days, or would 120 days make more sense? Or is the 90 something from the town, or is it your choice?
No, more is better. When we were walking a thinner line last year, not knowing what was going on, so we just randomly picked 90. 120 would be more luxurious. You won't see the roof. It's flat. it's lower in height. So I would appreciate that. 90 was a leftover from our request last year. And given all the other challenges that everybody has, I was trying to keep our ask as simple as possible. So I
Yeah,
would,
so I mean, my take from, I mean, the proposal looks great to me, and I think that 120 would make more sense for you from a business point of view. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Laura, any problems with that? Sorry, Laura, would there be any problems extending it to 120?
No, I think you would just want to think about, issues of impervious surface and trying to limit the impervious surfaces in the area. So it's a balance, I think, for the ASCC to strike for what you think is appropriate.
Okay,
All right,
that was my only question. Thanks.
great. Jane, do you have any questions?
No, I think that covered it.
Great. Deke, I have a question, and it sort of relates to the impervious surface question. The water runoff from the temporary, will that simply drain onto the ground?
Yeah, so, even with the, for ADA reasons, even with the decking that's underneath the trellis, it's spaced as such that it sits over drain rock that is all still considered pervious surface. So last year with the tent, or even now, we have a French drain around the storage, and it all is just absorbed into the beer garden as you know it, which is a giant, where everybody sends me their wood chips a couple times a year.
Right.
So it's all pervious surface out there. We're not looking to add any additional impervious surface.
So the net fall on the footprint of the site would remain the same, essentially, whether there was corrugated temporary roofing on it or not.
Yeah, the corrugated, clearly when there's corrugated roofing, it's instead of it all sprinkling all over the place, it will run off the edges, but it will tie into the French drain. Those, basically that's a dry well drain. So all that water just goes back in and sits underneath all the wood chips out there. And it's just a natural drain field.
Great, thank you. That was my only question. All right, are there members of the public that would like to comment? And I don't have control of the
I'm looking
chat function.
and I do not see any hands up. So again, if there's any members of the public, you would use your raise the hand feature if you want to provide comments.
And it doesn't look like there are any.
No, I don't see any.
All right, let's return to the commission for discussion and possible motion making. Jane, would you like to begin?
Well, I think it's a good design solution. I'd hate to see the waste of money involved in putting up a tent every year and taking it down. And I would like to echo Al's suggestion, though, that we should maybe give the option of up to 120 days, just because I think anybody in business needs as much help as they can get right now. Those were my only comments. I approve. I like the idea.
Thank you, Jane. Al.
I think it's just an incredibly good solution. I think that it's far superior to the tent. I really think that the outfit running the Alpine Inn has been completely professional, and this is a creative solution that I didn't think it was going to be possible to meet the setbacks and do something that made sense, but you managed to do it. I like the way the heaters work. I think the lighting proposed is fine. I think it's just wonderful. Great way to keep a valuable town resource operating year round.
All right, thank you, Al. I agree with my fellow commissioners. This is a very fine solution to this need. And among the that I see over the previous tent proposal was that it's probably going to be more opaque. So in those instances, when it's fully lit and the roof is in place, it's going to cut down on light spill even more than the tent solution did. And I like the downlighting aspect of the trellis. We were talking about whether to allow downlighting hanging from trees last time, which is something I wouldn't prefer. But I think this is a really elegant solution. So I'm completely in favor, and I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Okay, how about I'll make a motion to approve the proposal with the conditions recommended by staff, with the minor adjustment that the corrugated roofing can be used 120 days per year.
I'll second the motion.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes 3-0.
Thank you very much. And thanks again, Dave, for planting that seed with us a year ago. I'm sorry it took me so long to come around with the idea once you sort of got me started, but it's great. And we'll get into building because it's an independent structure pretty quickly, and we'll try and get this up before the heavy rains come.
That's great.
And we hope they come. All right. Thank you, everybody, and appreciate your hard work on the fire department issues too.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You all.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Okay, that concludes the regular agenda. We handled the minutes. Are there staff updates, commissioner comments, reports?
I do have a staff report.
Go
So
ahead.
we talked about on October 26th, talking about some conceptual reviews, and we talked about a process to go to a meeting of the mayor and chairs. But staff came back and thought about that a little bit more, and we thought it would be nice to have a test run of this proposal so that we can see how it might work and help us to develop some more procedure and policy for it. So we offered this option of a completely optional conceptual review before ASCC. And we have 3 projects that have taken us up on that offer.
Wow.
So they know that they're the guinea pigs, so to speak. And those projects we plan to hear on December 7th at a special meeting. So that's why I checked with all of you about your availability. And the address of those that we expect to bring to you are 77 Palmer, 85 Palmer, and 35 Possum. So
Great.
we will be generating a very brief kind of staff cover memo that will cover what we can tell so far about the project in terms of its compliance with the development standards. We'll give you any questions or issues that have come up from staff, and we'll give you any questions or issues that have come up from the applicant. And then we can have a conversation and see how that goes. And then we'll take that feedback back to us at staff level. Probably then have the meeting of the mayor and the chairs and propose a actual process moving forward once we've had a little bit of a test case. So that's how we propose to do that. So it's going to be challenging to fit it in. So we're going to do our best to get you a little bit of analysis, but you can expect that staff memo to be relatively light for this first time through. And then there has been a number of questions in the community that have come through ASCC members and from residents about 880 Westridge. And we offered them the conceptual design review as well, but they got back in touch with us and indicated that they are not pursuing a project at this time. So my understanding, my current understanding is they are putting that project on hold. So if it does come back in, then we'll regroup, but we do not expect that to be coming forward to the ASCC anytime soon. And then finally, another thing that came out of October 26th meeting is that there was an interest in having a project list for ASCC to know what the upcoming projects are, not to discuss them, but just know what projects we have in. So I've got staff working on that right now, and we'll start to give you that project list on a regular basis so that you know what projects we'll have on future meetings, even if they're some time out, even if they're months out. That way you'll know what the active projects are, and our residents will know what the active projects are as well. So we'll be figuring out how to format and publicize that to get it to you, but we'll work out those details and that'll be forthcoming as well.
That all
Well,
sounds
that's all
great.
excellent news.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's very helpful for staff when we really know what you're trying to achieve, if that makes sense, right? Like having a conversation about what we're trying to achieve is really helpful to us to figure out how to give that to you, right? And how to improve the process, and how to release some of that anxiety that people were feeling about not knowing what projects were coming up or not having clarity around how we're going to review them or when. So we're happy to continue working on that. We just ask for all of your continued patience and kindness as
Well,
we figure out how to
yeah.
do it. We're not, we are kind of really quickly on this December 7th meeting because we had a couple projects that thought it might benefit from it. Otherwise, we just never would have done it this quickly. But we had projects that seemed really appropriate for it. So it is going to take us a little while to actually, get this going on an ongoing basis. But it's nice to be able to do something right away to have a little test case.
Yeah, these are big steps, Laura, and I really appreciate how quickly you've implemented this stuff. And I see Jane has a question or a comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, it was just to say that we did have a pre-conceptual site visit on those 2 properties on Wayside about, what was it, 2-3 years ago?
You're right.
Yes.
It was in the system. It's just nobody had asked for it in the last couple of years, and I believe that pair of houses were the family actually moved, so they didn't go forward. So that might be why it hasn't been sort of more noticeable, Laura, because that was they had us for the meeting and then didn't go any further. And then I was just wondering, if we've got the special meeting on the 7th, does that mean we have any other meetings in December, or is the 7th the only one? Or will we have...
I'm not 100% sure yet right now because we're trying to see what applications are ready. So I think that will be the only meeting, but the other regularly scheduled meeting, if we were to hold it, would be on December 14th.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the last meeting of the month would be on the 28th, which of course will be canceled. So we can plan on the 7th for sure, and then I'll have to let you know about the 14th.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you very much,
Very
Laura.
You're
Any
welcome.
commissioner reports?
None for me.
I haven't seen anything apart from we did get the neighbour calls to go and see the Mountjoy property.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think she did get a little bit confused as to how many people she could invite, because she'd emailed me first separately, and then she said Dana's coming as well, and then I said, I hope you haven't invited anybody else, and then we had the flurry of emails. So I think she was very keen to get us all there, but she didn't know what I meant when I said we have to be careful, because otherwise we'll be in trouble with the Brown Act. So but I think it's all worked out for her.
I think it worked out, and I certainly appreciate all of the commissioners always paying attention to that. And these are just the things sometimes we have to work through when they happen, because we can't anticipate them. And this is still partially, how we deal with our COVID protocols, where we can't just meet on the site and walk around and see things. So thanks everyone for your flexibility and keeping me in the loop. That's really helpful, so that I can keep our eyes open on, any potential violations and make sure that we're in good compliance. So thanks for that.
But unfortunately, Dana and I were actually at Jan's house when you sent that email.
Well, and Laura, thank you for helping clarify how we could handle those site visits and be careful about the Brown Act. And I was concerned about the creation of a serial meeting, and with Laura's guidance, we ended up navigating it so that at least if there was any substantive discussion that took place, Jane, when you and Dana visited, it didn't turn into a serial meeting by including the rest of us.
Yeah.
Right.
So I also made a site visit, and I listened carefully to Jan's concerns and made my own observations on the property, but we didn't actually have a discussion about the project.
No.
So I think by the end of the process, Jan understood why we needed to be careful. She certainly wanted us all to hear her concerns.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that worked out in the end. I had or I'm in the process of some additional project review, and I have to confess I haven't finished it yet. That's the review of revised landscape plan for 848 and 850 Portola Road. Dylan sent me a request and some materials. I haven't finished looking at it yet, but I will do so before Thanksgiving and return it to him. But I think that's the only thing I've been involved in the last couple of weeks.
And I'll just give a brief report for Dana. We did a review of a staff discretionary review of an ADU. And she had initially made some recommendations about reducing the access to the scenic corridor. We had a very productive meeting. They reduced the path and the lighting that would have been out to the scenic corridor, and we approved the ADU with those conditions. So very productive meeting that we had.
Where was that ADU? Where was the ADU?
Okay, it was on the, I'm sorry, I didn't write it down before this and I'm starting to get tired. On Alpine across, let's see. Like it's on
Pasadena Royal.
do you remember? Oh, John remembers. Thank you, John, for the save. There we go, Pasadena Road. Yeah, on the corner.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Mhm.
So that was approved with conditions.
Great.
Right.
All right. Any other staff or commission business? Seeing none, I'll adjourn the meeting.
All right, great.
And
Night
thank
all. See y'all.
you all for hanging in there on the lengthy fire station review. It's an important project. So
Yep.
Pretty impressive.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks,
All right.
everyone. Happy Thanksgiving.
yes,
Yeah.
and to you.
Thanksgiving.
All right.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
Bye.